Hi everyone, this is Andy from We Are Wellbeing. Welcome to the next episode of the Wellbeing Insight series. Today I'm joined by Katie, who is our musculoskeletal specialist.
Hi guys.
Hi Katie.
Hiya.
Just to keep everybody on track and understanding where all this information is going to be gathered, you can follow the hashtag WAW Insights. So that'll be appearing on all forms of social media. This is myself and Katie. How are you doing today, Katie?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, enjoying the lockdown.
Bit of cynicism in your voice there.
Not at all.
How have you been coping with it all?
Yeah, different. Different is probably the best adjective I can come up with.
Well, my take on it is I am really glad I never became a teacher. Homeschooling is not my calling in life, put it that way.
Maybe teaching adults, maybe little kids is very different, isn't it?
Well, this is absolutely. There's a big difference between a training room with employees and a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. Who would have thought colouring in would be so stressful? So, Katie is here today to talk us through her wellbeing insights into posture care. Katie, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on yourself, just so everybody can familiarise themselves with you?
Yep, so I have worked with quite a few number of different clients in terms of musculoskeletal injuries, and that kind of ranges from the general public, who might be kind of active people and sedentary people, all the way through to professional athletes. So I used to work with the GB wheelchair basketball, so I've got quite a broad spectrum of knowledge, and my kind of focus for the last couple of years has been on chronic pain, and in particular chronic back pain. There seems to be quite a growth of it in the last 5 to 10 years, and there's also been a mass of information, which some of it is incorrect, some of it's correct, but most of it is incorrect. And actually what I wanted to try and do was very much just kind of level the playing field, so it makes it a much easier subject to understand, because it can be very taxing subject, and you can sometimes feel like you're a bit fobbed off. So hopefully some of the information you're going to get today will give you an understanding of what pain is and what chronic pain is and how to cope with it a little bit better.
That's brilliant. And just to kind of give you guys a bit of an insight as well. So obviously Katie, from the expertise point of view, is a great person to be speaking on this. From my perspective, I'm the person that has had 3 back operations, 10 years of sciatica, been through the run-of-the-mill, on every kind of prescription medication you can think of in relation to solving back pain, a real nightmare of it. And I think it's hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of insight into why it's so important to listen to what Katie's going to go through, because I spent a fortune on alternate therapies and trying to look for some sort of relief, and I genuinely believe listening to the stuff that Katie's going to go through would have changed my mind and would have changed my overall outcome of potentially not needing 3 surgeries. So hopefully, if you've got any questions following this, do get in touch, and we'll be able to kind of hopefully point you in the right direction for some good advice. So, Katie, do you want to start off with a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, so like I said, it's very much a whistle-stop tour of posture care and how to kind of cope with some of the things that you guys might come up with on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to quickly cover what is chronic pain, the kind of the smaller aspects of it, of is physical damage really the problem, a little bit of prevention about treatment, and then we're going to come up with some easy at-home exercises which aren't all physical, as you'll see towards the end. So one of the first things we're going to cover is posture that important? So when we look at posture, there's a lot of things that we can get from posture, and probably a lot of things that you've heard about is that posture is the overall problem. So when you take a look at the next slide, or when you take a look at the pictures on the slide, you can see there's probably been some things that you've been told how to sit, you've been told how to stand, you've been told how to lift. One of the big things that we see with posture is that actually these are just one way to stand, it's one way to lift, and it's one way to sit. With all of these postures, it's designed to put the least amount of load through your joints. But the problem is is that when we have little to no load continuously, it means there's no challenge on the human body. Now, short term, that's not really a problem. But when we only have short term, little to no challenge, that then creates a lot of long term, little to no challenge, which in turn is going to make your body less resilient to movement, your body less resilient to lifting, your body less resilient to quite a number of things. It's then going to lead to weakness. So all of a sudden we come up with this body that's not really designed to do what we were first designed to do in the first place as a human being. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an awareness that actually posture is not the problem. The problem is that you're standing in one position or you're sitting in one position for long continuous periods of time. So what does cause chronic pain then? Well, I mean, that's a question in itself. So when we look at what causes chronic pain, huge amounts of things cause chronic pain. Now, chronic pain is a time frame. Chronic pain is literally just, I've had pain for longer than 3 months. Now, when I've had pain for longer than 3 months, it switches into a different way that your brain then analyzes what's going on. So acute pain is, I bent over, I picked up something that was too heavy, and I've created some type of stimulus within the body which might give me a strain of the muscle. It might cause some excess inflammation somewhere in the body. The problem is when that's not managed properly, we then lead into chronic pain. Now you can see with everything on there, we haven't even really talked about posture. We haven't talked about physical damage. Now, actually, the truth of the matter is when we look at chronic pain, it's very rarely to do with physical damage. What it's to do with is lots of other things within the body. And what we do is, like I said, we become less resilient. And through that less resilience, my brain then can't cope with the amount of excess things that I then ask it to do. So if I'm used to sitting down for 8 hours a day, and I do that 5 days a week, I do that for 12 months a year, and all of a sudden you then ask me to lift something heavy, well, it's not a surprise that my body can't do it. The problem is how we then interpret that heavy load. Now, one, I might not be strong enough to do it, so we look at poor physical conditioning. But actually, it may well also come down to, I just didn't know how to do it in the first place because you've never asked me to do it. So the body then has to find different ways to cope. We then become anxious about a situation. So if I give you a good example of let's say a person who once bent over and put their socks on, and now won't bend over again because they remembered that putting their socks on hurt them. Putting your socks on is a fundamental thing that most people do every morning, or at least that kind of position to bend over to put your trousers on or something on. So you create anxiety within that movement. So then your brain remembers that you were anxious about putting your socks on. So the next time it comes to put your socks on, you tense up, you create this anxiety. We then look at things like work dissatisfaction, negative activity, and the lifestyle that you lead. If you're unhappy at work, that can trigger chronic pain episodes. If you are a negative person, so everything's a bit rubbish in life, that can create another problem with chronic pain. And you may well have started off with a physical problem to start off with, but because how it was managed, and that has then turned into chronic pain. We then look at high psychological demands. So again, if you mix that with work dissatisfaction, psychological demands, it's all about perception. If I perceive that my life is stressful, if I perceive that I have too much going on, my brain then can't cope with it. And unfortunately, what that does, it sends lots of chemical signals down to my central nervous system and lots of chemicals around, which then create this chronic pain problem. And the problem is you don't have any physical problem going on. So what is it about physical damage then? So if all of those things cause chronic pain, why haven't I mentioned physical damage? Well, actually, when you look at that picture of kind of the spine coming down the side, one of the big things that we see is people think they have slipped disc, and it's a very common problem that you come across. One, you can't slip a disc; they just don't slip. They bulge or herniate. One of the issues you have is when someone tells you have bulged a disc or you've herniated your disc, immediately your thought process goes to, oh, that's the worst thing in the world. Oh my word, I've done that. The fact of the matter is, it's normal. Disc degeneration is absolutely normal. It's just part of the aging process. back pain is very rarely dangerous. And it's unlikely that the problem that you have, particularly if you've had it for longer than 3 months, it's associated with any physical damage whatsoever, which is why imaging is a problem. So when someone says they want an MRI or an X-ray and they've had a back problem for 6 months, chances are that MRI is going to show absolutely nothing, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with you physically. The problem is, well, why are you getting that pain then? And again, if you think about, I've created an anxious situation because I bent over. You then got all the kind of media that you kind of see on the television, and then you've got someone else telling you on social media that you shouldn't bend and twist, and bending over is a problem and twisting is a problem. In a manual handling course, you're told not to bend and twist. Your back is designed to bend and twist. It likes being loaded. It likes being bent. It likes moving. And the problem is, when we create a position where you're told not to move, all of a sudden when you need your back to move, you are then very anxious again about doing something. So we create this situation within our body where we become scared of movement, which then can create lots of pain flare-ups, which aren't normally related to tissue damage. And if they are related to tissue damage, normal tissue fixes within about 8 to 12 weeks, depending on kind of site and severity of injury. But the common triggers that I tend to see when I speak to people that come into the clinic, or that they come in and speak to me about back pain, there are some common things that I see from people. One, there is no mechanism of injury. There is not one thing that they can remember that caused their back pain, which says to me, this has come over a period of time. So that says to me, there hasn't been one catastrophic injury. But then you speak to them about their lifestyle. Now, sometimes they have very, very poor sleep. So poor sleep means that you act very differently. You'll all know, if anyone's, you've had a very bad night's sleep, or if you've got kids and you don't sleep, you feel awful the next day. Now that can trigger pain, but it triggers it in a non-physical sense. It triggers it in a chemical sense, and sets off these neurotransmitters which make you feel you're in pain. Stress levels. When you're stressed, how many of you carry your stress in your shoulders, and you can feel yourself tensing up when you're in a stressful situation? And again, stress is perceived. Now, what I deem as stressful, someone else might not deem as stressful. But if I go back to the talking about the first slide again, when we were talking about posture, if you've never physically challenged your body, then your body doesn't know how to be physically challenged. So when it comes to a physical challenge, your body thinks, oh my word, that's a lot of stress. But equally, mentally, if you don't mentally stress yourself out, controlled stress, then when it becomes an uncontrolled stress, you have no idea how to cope with it. And unfortunately, when it becomes an uncontrolled stress, mentally or physically, your body then does its best to cope. And unfortunately, it's best to cope sometimes as it goes in a bit of a shutdown. If you have any tension within the body as well. So again, if you don't move on a regular basis, you're going to create tension spots in the body, and that can really aggravate some type of movement. So then you then become scared of that movement again, you then become anxious about that movement, and you don't want to do it because you think you're going to cause more physical damage. Chances are you won't. And then low mood or inactivity. So again, this might be a bit of a chicken or the egg situation. Chronic pain can cause depression or depressive feelings, purely and simply because the chemical signals that travel up to the brain, they synapse in what we call your limbic system. Now, your limbic system is responsible for emotion, and it also synapses in your reticular formation, which is responsible for your sleep-awake cycle. Now, we know that if I'm poorly sleeping, that's going to have an impact on a pain level. But when it comes to low mood, did my depressive feelings and my low negative affectivity cause my pain, or did my pain cause my low affectivity and my low mood? And again, it is a bit of a chicken or the egg, but from my feeling, it would be that there's a combination of the two within people, and it's trying to unfold that story about yourself in order to kind of get back to a place where you feel better about bending over, and therefore your mood becomes better, and therefore you create less chemical signals, therefore you're in less pain. And then the biggest one, like I said again, is inactivity or unaccustomed activity. There is nothing wrong with bending forward. There is nothing wrong with twisting. There is nothing wrong with lifting. However, we all have our limits. I can probably lift maybe 20 to 30 kilograms in the gym. If I was to lift 60 kilograms, I'm going to do some damage. Now, the problem is if you can only lift 3 to 4 kilograms and you're expected to be lifting 5 or 10 kilograms, which, you know, is probably a normal weight if you're trying to pick up your kids or you're trying to pick up a piece of furniture, which is what we do in everyday life. If your level only allows you to pick up a certain 2 to 3 kilograms, but you need to lift 5 to 10, something is probably going to go wrong. Doesn't mean to say that it's going to go wrong ultimately for the rest of your life, but it's how we then manage that moving forward. So it's all about physically and mentally challenging yourself in order to prevent anything kind of developing into chronic pain.
Recording, go for it.
Okay, so how do we prevent and treat the problem then, if there's a kind of a mix between physical and the mental side of it? So initially, the first thing I would say is to move. Now, that's probably completely contradictory to a lot of information you've ever been given. And I guess Andy can, with the stuff that he's gone through, can probably back me up on that. Is that the kind of experience you had, Andy?
Yeah, well, I think the problem with the experience that I've had is that the advice has been so conflicting. Whether I've been to chiropractors or physios or sports massage, what I really struggled with was getting the right advice. And obviously the recommendations are going to be different from everyone. Some people would say, you know, just do some McKenzie press-ups on a daily basis and that'll sort out your slip disc. Or just rest and take a load of ibuprofen and stay in bed and take loads of anti-inflammatories and that'll work, and that didn't work. And nothing really worked for me until, and then I had recommendations of saying you should never deadlift again, you should never do any weighted squats again, avoid it like the plague. And then I met a fantastic physio called Kev who took me in the gym and told me to deadlift and start lifting some weights again. And, you know, it was contradictory to everything that I'd heard for the previous 10 years. And then before you know it, my back started improving, I started getting stronger, and I started being more capable of putting, you know, you talk earlier about mentioning about putting your socks on and all these simple things suddenly became a lot more manageable because I was doing the things that for years I'd been told not to do. So that's why partly I was so keen to kind of get your insight into this and to support some other people to get some better advice.
I think the key word that you just said was capable. And I think that's probably, of everything that we're going to talk about, I'm trying to make people capable of daily living. And sometimes when you, like you said, the information can become conflicting. But again, if you just use common sense with these things that you can see on the slide, if we don't move, something is going to go wrong. So if we take the car analogy, if you put a car in a garage and you don't use it, what's going to happen to it when you try and turn it over? It's going to take a little bit of time to get back to normal. And the older that car is, the longer that's going to take. So when we stop moving, we then are going to take a lot longer to get moving again. So when we are in pain, you've got to move, but you've got to move to a level that doesn't cause it more pain than you're already in. So you've got to work just below that level. But then if you're not in pain, but you're in that kind of group where you're in the more susceptible group of getting back pain, and that could be because your job is fairly sedentary, you've got a desk job, or you're just in a certain age group. So the older we get, the more chance we're going to have, and that's just because it's a natural aging process, and we tend to move a lot less as we get older than we used to as a 5-year-old kid. They tend to bounce about a bit, and as a 30-year-old, you tend not to as much as you used to. So when we move, it's about making that conscious effort and being consistent. And it's not about going to the gym 3 times a week. Fantastic if you do that. But what are you doing in the in-between bit? So if you've been sat down for 8 hours and you're only going to the gym for an hour, you've only done 1 hour's worth of activity, but 8 hours worth of sitting. And you can sit already, that's only on one day. You calculate that up over 1 week, that's 5 hours worth of movement, 40 hours worth of sitting. That's a huge difference between sitting and or being sedentary and moving. So it's how can you make that nice balance? The next thing to look at is your mindset. And again, people are going to think this is all a bit kind of, it's all in my head. And to a certain degree, pain is all about perception. If I perceive that something is really bad, it's going to be bad. So if I can think, it's just putting my socks on, it's just putting your socks on. Whereas if I all of a sudden get my socks out in the morning and go, oh my God, I've got to put my socks on, this is the worst thing in the world, guess what? It's going to be the worst thing in the world because you think that it is. So just changing your mindset about things. Now, that can be quite hard to do if you've been in pain for a really long time. But as Andy said, when all of a sudden he did a deadlift and thought, oh my word, I can do this, I'm pretty sure your mindset at that point was completely changed because you've done something. And all of a sudden things are moving in a way that you never thought they could do.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's...
I think when people have been in chronic pain, and I think after I mean, I personally had sciatica for 10 years. I mean, I used to drive to work. I used to, I lived at the time. I remember living in Leeds and driving to Sheffield. And by the time I got out of the car in Sheffield, I had to crawl out of the car. And I think, if somebody said to me back then, a lot of this is in your mind, I think I would have punched them.
Yeah, yeah.
But then what I also believe is that you can change. It is, a lot of it is mind over matter. You tell yourself, well, this is going to be excruciating, and I sometimes do it, and I'm probably maybe 60% recovered from any sort of back issues that I have. So I was out in the garden this morning playing football with the kids, and I bent down to pick up the ball, and before I bent down to do it, I knew my mind was telling me, oh, this could be problematic, this could hurt. But then when I did it, I was fine. And I think it's just relearning these pathways to tell yourself that you can do this stuff.
Yeah, it's exactly relearning. One of the big things that, and again, because this is a whistle stop tour, if someone wants to Google neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity is learning positively or negatively these new pathways in your brain, and if you've learned over the last 10 years that bending forwards is a problem, your brain, that's what it knows. Bending forwards is a problem. Whereas if we get to the next bit where I say physically challenge, start challenging your body a little bit more. I wouldn't want to think that my limitation is for the next 20 years of my life is going to be sitting down. And if I do anything other than sitting down, I'm going to be in pain. So the more physical challenge that you can get, the better. Now, if you're one of these people that want to go and do mud runs and want to go into the gym and want to go to the extreme of that, brilliant. But actually, it's physically challenge yourself more than you're doing now. And if your life at the moment is sat down for 40 hours a week, is going back home, cooking some tea, sat down for the rest of the night watching TV, your physical challenge could just be parking yourself further away from work. It's physically challenging you because you've never done it. And then the more you do that physical challenge, the better you're going to be. So it's about creating this place in your body where your brain thinks that nothing's a problem, and that we're all going to have our limitations, but I'd like your limitation and my limitation to be quite high and not, oh God, I sneezed, something went wrong, because that's no way to live your life. And then we look at mentally challenged, like I'd said previously, when we don't challenge ourselves mentally, everything, the perception of that situation then becomes a problem, and that can trigger a chronic pain problem. Stress is not a problem. Too much stress is a problem, but how we control that stress is really important. And if we can control it when we have a moment of uncontrolled stress, our body can react to that in a better way because we understand how to cope with that. A good example of that, if you remember your first girlfriend or boyfriend when you were like a teenager, remember the first time you broke up with them? Do you remember that, Andy, the first time you broke up with someone?
I've not got over it, to be honest.
Devastated. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because I use this analogy in my training.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. But the more you break up with someone, not suggesting that you break up with them consistently, but the more you go through that, you're going to be all right. So the next time it happens, it's rubbish. Don't wrong, it is rubbish.
I'd just like to just like to take this opportunity to tell my wife, if she's listening, that she's safe.
But you would have got used to it. So do you remember the second time or the third time you broke up with somebody? It's kind of, I know I'll be fine. First couple of weeks, horrific, but I know I'll be fine after a period of time. Now, if you've never experienced any moment of stress in your life, when that period of stress comes, and if it's in adulthood, you've got no idea how to cope with that at all. And that then becomes a physical problem, and that then creates a lot of chronic pain. So that all then gets mixed up with, oh, I bent over this morning and that must be the problem. And it probably isn't the problem, but there's a lot of unpacking to do when someone's in chronic pain. And that's any chronic pain condition. When you start unpacking that story, it can show up a lot of things. which is where the next bit comes in. So one of the things that I'm a big advocate of, if you don't like something, change it. And that could be just change the situation you're in, or change your attitude towards the situation. If I haven't liked working at a company, I've either tried to change my mind about doing it, or I've gone, actually, do you know what? I can't do what they do. So therefore I'm going to have to leave, and I'm going to have to change the situation. There is nothing worse than sitting at your desk at work going, I hate this job. Absolutely hate it. Hate my job. Hate everything about it. I don't want to be here, because you don't want to go to work in the morning. You feel awful all day. You're probably then ratty with whoever you lived with, whether that's your wife, your husband, your kids, because you hate work. And that's work. Unfortunately, work is the big part of your life. That's where you spend most of your life. And if you hate it, why are you there? Change that situation. And then that's going to have a big impact on your mental health. That's going to have a big impact on your physical health, because you might want to get out and do more. And it's going to change your mindset. And that ultimately is going to have a huge impact on your on chronic pain of any description. And particularly when you talk to people in chronic pain, they have the ones that are coping with it, and the ones that are managing it, and the ones that have got rid of it are the ones that have pretty much done this. The ones that have sat there on medication for the last 10 years, well, guess what? Nothing happened. You're still in exactly the same position you were 10 years ago, because nothing has changed within your life. And that's the important thing to do. It's those small little changes. So when we look at kind of, well, how do I physically challenge myself, or how do I challenge myself in order to get better then? Now, this could be, the best thing you can do is walk. Now, that's probably the next step of information your GP will give you. And some GPs are already giving this information out, that walking and breathing are two of the best things that you can do. Now, again, I'm probably sure, Andy, if you take yourself back 10 years, if your doctor had said to you, Andy, just walk and breathe, I'm pretty sure you would have gone, are you kidding me? Just walk and breathe. That's all you want me to do, just walk and breathe.
Oh, absolutely. But the difficulty is whenever I've been to a GP for back issues, it's for years and years it's just been ibuprofen, anti-inflammatories, and rest.
Yeah, which don't do anything. None of that fixes you. That very much masks a problem. Whereas again, challenge the body. So walking uses every single joint of your body, every single joint. Nothing is not used. So when we walk, we're using everything. If we start doing hill walking, you're using your hips even more, and you're using the big joints within your body. Now, ultimately what that does on a very small scale challenges the body physically. Now, your overall goal is to increase mobility and strength. So we need to get to a position where your body understands how to do that. Now, if you click on the link of the mobility, and you can find this link on YouTube as well, the mobility one, basically it's, well, when you look at it, it's just me flailing about with my arms and legs is the nicest way to put it.
I thought it was a new dance craze when I first watched it.
Yeah, but essentially, so one of the big things is you're told to move, but people go, well, I don't know how to. Of course you do, you're a human. Everyone knows how to move. Move in any direction. Think about what you do when you first wake up in the morning. What does your stretch look like? And it's kind of a moving side to side and moving everything and moving your shoulders and moving your hips, and things might crack and rumble and things like that. But with mobility, it's all about being mobile. And the more mobile you can be, the better physically you can be. The better physically I can be, I can then start increasing my strength. The two better things for increasing strength are yoga and Pilates. The only reason for that is because it uses your entire body. That's the only reason. Squats are pretty much lower body, shoulder press is upper body, press up is upper body. Yoga and Pilates are everything all in one go. So it creates a balance within the body. It creates an ability for your body to understand, well, how does my head talk to my legs? How does my knees talk to my hips? How do my shoulders talk to my core? And then anything that creates that is going to create an overall strength in the body. And then there are very specific things that you can do as well, which can, like I said, target specific parts of the body. But it's just about that. It's the physical challenge that you're trying to create. And then the same thing with the mental challenge. So, and when I say mental challenges, it could be anything. Learn a new skill. When was the last time you learned a new skill? When was the last time you learned something like playing a piano or a guitar or any type of instrument or a language? when you start creating those new pathways, your brain then becomes more susceptible to wanting to change, and therefore you become more mindful about a situation. Now, that in itself can create a huge effect when we look at chronic pain and how to cope with chronic pain and how to eventually get rid of chronic pain. And that's the really important thing. It's trying to make people capable of being a human being. And me being capable of a human being is not me sat down for 8 hours. It's me being able to stand up and play with my kids. And for granddads and grandmas, it's, can I play with my grandkids? Can I pick them up out of the cot? Can I run around with them for 20 minutes without going, oh God, my back's hurting? It's being able to sit down with your legs crossed on the floor because you've got a 5-year-old in front of you wanting a tea party, and the ability to stand back up again. It's little things like that within your life can make a huge amount of difference if we can just challenge ourselves. So kind of in summary then, the first thing to think about is it's probably not as bad as you think it is. Now, that in itself can create, again, a nice little mindset. So it's probably not as bad as you think it is. It's probably not physical. It's probably nothing to do with any kind of physical damage. What's probably happened is a normal degeneration of the spine. Because you haven't moved for 10, 20 years, it might have created some sort of stiffness and some sort of weakness. It may well be that you lifted something a little bit too heavy and you weren't prepared for it, and you sat down because you were told to stop moving, and you took anti-inflammatory for the last 6 months and it hasn't fixed itself. But your body fixes itself. It's pretty remarkable, the human body, and it will fix itself. But we have to be mindful about how we fix it then. So being active daily and challenging your body. So when we're active and we challenge that body, we start creating a different mindset. We start creating a different physical body. We start creating lots of different things in the body which can ultimately decrease your perception of your pain level. And therefore it starts to decrease it. Eating a balanced diet, and again, that's what any health and well-being consultant or any health and well-being person will tell you. A balanced diet is key to most things. Eating a balanced diet, particularly when we look at how neurons fire, if we're not looking at the right type of minor things within your diet, that can lead to it can lead to your muscles not working properly. It can lead to neurons not doing what they're meant to do. It can lead to lots of things. It can lead to gut problems. It can lead to huge amounts of problems, including increasing your pain level because you don't have the right chemicals within the body in order to have the right message to the brain. So a balanced diet is key to pretty much, well, being a human. That's the easiest way to put it. And then balancing your work and life. Personally, I don't think my job is stressful, and that's because I enjoy it. I don't think that my work life, I probably do more work than anything else, but to me that's not a problem. To me my work is my life. But actually for some people, if your work isn't your life and you're having to spend more hours at work and you're not having to spend time with your kids, or you're not spending time doing the stuff that you want to do, that can be a real problem for some people. Find the balance, change the situation, whatever that change is, change that situation to suit you. And if you can't change it, then see what are the kind of minor amendments that you can make to create a better balance of work and life. And you can always create a better balance of work and life. And then the last one is to challenge your mind. And it's often the forgotten one when we look at pain, and everyone thinks it's a physical problem. And actually, more often than not, like I said, when you unpack someone's story, a big part of the story is their mindset. A big part of the story is how they might have had a trauma early on in life that was just never dealt with. And that can manifest itself as a physical problem and keep showing up later on in life. So it's really important to kind of look after your mind as well as looking after yourself physically. Now, that's a whistle-stop tour of back pain, and I could probably talk here for 2 or 3 hours, but about it.
No, you know what, Katie, that was brilliant. It gives, it reminded me of a lot of the things that I probably should be doing still. But I think I think what we want, the aim of this session really was to give people a little bit of an insight into, if you struggle with back care, that, there is a way out of it. and that you know it's not something that you have to live with. I mean, I remember somebody saying to me years and years ago that, you know, once you've had a bad back, you'll probably always have a bad back. And I think, you know,
just not just so.
well,
Yeah.
I think this, you know, obviously I personally had, you know, 3 surgeries now, so my back is never going to be what it was pre-surgery. But I do all the things that I always wanted to do. I play sports. I go to the gym. I can swim. I can play with my kids, and all those things have happened as a result of getting some really good advice and sticking with it. I think one thing that people need to make sure that they do is it's not just about, you can't just pay a physio to give you a bit of manipulation or go see a chiropractor and get a quick crack here and a quick crack there. You've got to put the work in. And I know that if ever my back tweaks, I know exactly what I need to do. There's certain exercises, there's certain movements that really, really help me. But I have to work on it. If I just forget about it and don't do those key exercises, I guarantee my back will get worse. So I think it's reminding ourselves to make sure that we do have this level of ownership over it as well.
Yeah, I think again, like you said, it's not as a physio or a therapist or a chiropractor and osteo. We're a facilitator. In the same way that your maths teacher isn't sitting your GCSE exam, then you have to sit it. So with any kind of back, neck, knee, shoulder, wrist, whatever type of injury you've got, you have to fix it yourself. It's just that we become the facilitator to do that. So absolutely, it's got to come from you, and you've got to look after, from all health and wellbeing, you've got to look after yourself in order to prevent or treat kind of what's going on. Most people are going to get back pain because you're a human being, because you move. It's how you cope with that and making sure that, like you said, you've got the right tools and you understand how to cope with it once you've got it.
Brilliant. I think that's enough. I think we've hopefully we've given everybody a good insight there.
Hopefully, yeah.
If anybody's got any questions, and I'm sure some people will have questions, because this is quite a sensitive subject when people have had potential chronic pain for a number of years. It can weigh you down a lot. So if you do have any questions for Katie, you can get in touch through any of the means on the screen. So we can get in touch through social media at WA Wellbeing. Obviously, the website's wearewellbeing.co.uk, and you can email us at hello@wearewellbeing.co.uk, and I'll forward that on to Katie. So Katie, thank you very much.
No problem.
Take care. Enjoy the rest of lockdown. I'm sure you've got some big plans for tonight.
Disney Plus, probably.
Enjoy. Right. Speak soon.
Will do. Thank you.